Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Joy, would you please call the roll?
Hamilton,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Boyer.
Yes.
Ledger Kalin.
Yes.
Hamas.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Council, are there any additions or changes to this evening's agenda? Now we'll move to our consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from the May 13th council meeting, resolution for employment at the wastewater treatment plant, approval of liquor licenses for Shokai and Everybody's Whole Foods, and claims in the amount of $132,508.64. Entertain a motion to approve, and the employee is full-time Ross Vance for wastewater.
Move to approve.
Moved by Hamilton to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Rasmussen. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ledger Kalin.
Yes.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Boyer.
Yes.
Hamas.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, council, we'll move on to our public appearances. And first, we have a request by KRUU, who are producing the Fairfield Music Festival. James Moore filled out the paperwork. I don't see James here. Maybe a little late, so let's move on to our next request, and we'll take that later if James comes. If not, we can visit the request and try to make a determination, because I know their event is coming up. Next would be our All Things Italian Street Festival, and Dan Raymond is here to discuss street closure with us.
Thank you, Mayor Malloy, members of the City Council, Police Chief Harvey. So it's time for the 8th annual All Things Italian Street Festival, and we're here requesting closing of the square part of the day on Saturday, and then for the festival in the evening. Basically, we're doing the same things we did last year. We're going to close all of the parking spaces that actually border the square, except for in front of George's Pizza, around 8 o'clock or 8:30, depending on what time I get up that morning.
Mm-hmm.
Then about 2:30, we'll close the second lane out, so there'll still be one lane of traffic that can go around the square. At 4 o'clock, we're going to close all of the streets at Main, Broadway, and Court, so no other cars can enter the square, but we'll leave an access for any of the cars parked on the square to leave. And the square will basically remain closed from about 4 till 11 p.m. till the band's over.
Great. Well, I know that last year you had a night like we're about to have tonight.
I told Dick we should have bought $20,000 worth of rain insurance.
Exactly. But we're sure hoping for good weather this year. Council, any questions for Dan? Anything new this year, Dan, in terms of what we're doing?
Nothing. For the street closings,
Yeah.
everything's going to be the same.
Okay.
As far as the festival, it's don't have any really big highlights. We're not bringing anybody from Italy or somewhere around the world, but we're still looking forward to a great festival. A lot of the usual performers and people will be there.
Well, I was forwarded an article that just appeared in Fra Noi, which is an Italian-American magazine out of Chicago, and they did a story on our festival. So I just want to read the first paragraph. It says, "There are countless Italian-themed festivals that occur during the warmer months across America, and I've been to quite a few, but none of them has quite the feel of Italy as the one that takes place deep in the cornfields of southern Iowa every June. There's a flavor of the small-town feste in Italy that comes from the entire community working together to throw a great party, and perhaps that's the secret ingredient of All Things Italian Festival that makes it so special. This little town of Fairfield, which hosted the first ever Italian bagpipe Zamponia festival in America last year over a weekend in June, hits its nail on the head every time." So it's a great recognition to be singled out as one of the best in the Midwest. There's certainly a lot of them that take place.
A lot of that. He's the prime force behind all of this.
The Council, I entertain a motion then to approve the request for street closings for All Things Italian.
Move for approval.
Moved by Revelinsky.
Second.
Second by Boyer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a presentation by Don Sander from the Jefferson County Alcohol Consumption Task Force. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I want to extend a note of thanks to the council. This is introductory for us. We've not been before the council before. My name again is Don Sander, and I'm the coordinator for a coalition who is working on reducing underage and binge drinking in the county. And if you're familiar with the work that we've done, the coalition has been working on implementation since July 2nd of last year. We're actively engaged in community education. We have radio advertising, print advertising, enforcement of current laws, and limiting the supply of alcohol to Jefferson County youth. On April 1st, with a great effort from the police department here, SPIFSIG funding, or the funding for the grant, paid for a round of compliance checks. During that exercise, the Fairfield police checked 25 locations, and of those 25, 10 sold to underage. That's a 40% failure rate. So what brings me here today is we would like to, on behalf of the coalition, we would like to ask for a partnership for the city council to help us further some work here. And real quickly, are you familiar with what a compliance check represents? Everybody has that?
Yes.
Okay. Here's, let's see here. Limiting the sources of alcohol to youth is an essential component of the coalition's work. Obviously, the 40% is unacceptable. We can't have it that high. On behalf of the coalition, I'm here to ask the council to consider partnering with our work in reducing the retail alcohol availability by adding a training certification requirement to the alcohol license submission period process. If a retailer comes before the city council that is looking for a renewal, which I see you have some on the agenda tonight, and any type of a new license, the coalition is asking that city council consider adding a training certification for all the employees, or as many employees as we can get, to certainly limit and increase the knowledge base so that we're not selling to kids. Now, there's two types of training that is available to retailers completely free of charge. So there's no burden on the retailers in regards to training. The first training is called IPAC training. It's from the Iowa Alcohol Beverage Division. It takes about 45 minutes online. You watch a video, there's a post-test, and if you successfully complete or pass the post-test, you get a certificate that's printed automatically, and that certificate is good for 2 years. The other one, which is, I do work for CETA. CETA has a more intense, more detailed face-to-face training program that takes about 2.5 hours, and it goes into more detail over and above what the IPAC training does. We're seeing, for example, in the county, there's confusion about IDs. Particularly, we're seeing some fake IDs that are showing up. We also explain the laws. We also explain the penalties for those laws. So the 2.5 hour training program, we feel, is a successful program, and we've been doing it in the county for a lot of years. So with that in mind, the April 1st compliance check failure rate indicates there more needs to be done in preventing alcohol from reaching underage youth. The coalition considers training of alcohol service as a core component in reducing alcohol services to youth, and asks the city council to support the coalitions by adding the documentation to the alcohol license application process. Any questions?
Council, any questions?
Are you talking about doing that as a resolution when you go along with the licensing approval?
We had a meeting this morning with, in fact, it came up a week ago when the when the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors had a license in front of them for the first ever alcohol license at the fairgrounds, the Board of Supervisors asked the coalition for input of what might be an alternative or some shared responsibility between, in this case, the county and the retailer who's asking for that license. So we suggested that the county grant the license upon completion of the training program. And they did complete that training program on Wednesday night, the event was Saturday night, and we also had members of the Fair Board on hand for that training as well. So.
One of the benefits for going through the merchants training for the merchant themselves is if they would have a violation, then they wouldn't, if they'd have a violation, that first violation, they wouldn't have the civil penalty go against them. They'd still have to pay the fine, but there is a benefit to the merchant itself for having the violation, having gone through this training. So it cost effectively.
So again, I ask, is this a resolution that goes along with each license, or is this a
That's what he's
blanket
asking for.
form that goes, because when a retailer applies for a liquor license, they apply online through the state, and then that information is transferred to you, Joy, and then it's brought and we approve it here. So in a sense, the retailer doesn't have an avenue straight to the city hall for their liquor license. So how would we, the city, notify the retailer that they have to do this and comply before the council can approve their license?
I think that what needs to do is write a form, and then they say, your liquor license is due. You need to provide merchants training and provide that documentation to Joy prior to doing it. Because the other thing that doesn't happen for you guys is if there is a violation, unless you read it in the paper, you guys don't know. You just kind of rubber
Right.
stamp all these and it goes on through. That way, there's,
Well, when you say rubber stamp, we give our approval because they've met all the requirements by getting the license from the state of Iowa in the first place.
Well, it's,
And that's all on them, but,
yeah, no.
how do we inform a new merchant that comes to Fairfield
Yeah.
that wants to set up a restaurant and sell wine?
I mean, I take the chief's point. We are not taking the step right now of reviewing whether there were any infractions on Shokai or everybody's in the last year before approving their license, and that may be an easy step for us to take before we do the approvals. But it sounds to me like it would have to come from our side, Darren. I think if we are going to add this layer to our approval process, then we are probably going to have to reach out and require it. Joy?
Right.
Well, that would mean
Yeah.
then that the retailer would apply online, that license would come here, and then you would have to contact the retailer that applied for the license and say, here's this form that we need filled out, if you're a new one. Otherwise, if you're a renewal, then we'll have to get history of what has gone with civil infractions, and we'll have to keep record on those.
Joy gets
which
that.
you already have.
Joy
all
gets
those
that
anyway.
stuff anyway from
We,
us.
not long ago, we
I just
had-
want to make sure that we're going to do this in a way
But
that
that's
it's not going
strictly
to
just
slow
for new
everything
ones?
down.
Strictly
You mean
just for new ones,
just
not
for the new
renewals.
ones? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, not long ago, we added, 6-7 months ago, we added the fire inspection
Right.
before we did the alcohol permitting, just
Yeah,
as a
Scott.
protocol and a process. And Scott's been, we schedule that ahead of time before we bring them to the agenda, and they'll have that passed by then. We could weave it into what we do as far as if it's a policy
Yeah.
established.
If it's a
certainly be
new
easy
one,
enough.
it's
Bureaucratic
a lot
process.
easier. I mean. I
Right. It would be easier with a new retailer
lot of them wait
rather
till
than an existing
Renewal.
The week
retailer
before.
for
Renewal,
renewal.
right.
It'd just be the
renew it.
next time we renewed them, they'd come back, we would require that at that time. Or we look
Okay.
at the ones maybe that violated, we require it now, front up for that other
Yeah.
percentage, but.
This would also apply then to people who apply to have beer gardens on the square or something like that.
I
That's
know
the
that,
idea.
like, the Ragbri committee,
Yeah,
Right.
you'd want-
Alyssa
yeah.
is scheduled that. She's already reached out
Oh, great,
to CETA, and like everybody who's going to participate in the beer garden for Ragbri is going to go through that training,
excellent.
Yeah.
just as an added benefit.
Yeah,
But we could have that as our policy, our resolution, that that's our policy for anyone who's applying for that kind of license, even a temporary license for service of alcohol of any kind, would have to have that training. I think that would be great.
Yeah, it's definitely an alarming failure rate. But you'd think we would want to do something else. A question, how are CETA programs organized? In
We
other
have-
words, it sounds to me like it would be easier for a lot of the people who are merchants of alcohol in the community coming to one meeting. Can it be done?
Right.
Or is that,
Right. There's been some changes in that environment. For example, just to the south of us, Van Buren and their SAFE Coalition had lost their UTIL funding. So what happens in that funding is they no longer sponsor blanket retailer training down there. So what's happened is CETA's stepped in to fill that role too.
okay.
We have two ladies who are excellent. In the case of the Jefferson County Supervisors, they passed that resolution on Monday, and by Wednesday night, the training was taking place. And we had 9 people from that group take training. So it's a matter of when, where. We have a lot of flexibility with that because we have 2 resources, and particularly I was talking to Julie about the volunteers downtown. We can run 2 classes simultaneously. We're that well equipped to do this.
And Kitty
Donna's-
Vogel did go in December to every merchant that has a liquor license and offered this class to everybody. So prior to doing these
Good.
compliance checks, that class was offered to the merchants. So,
But Dan, so the class, just to make it clear, it's done in just one session or?
Yes, it's 1 2.5-hour session. And the online training is, depending upon breaks, so on and so forth. But you can do that as well within about 45 minutes.
So Council, I guess the question is, would you like to take action on that tonight, or would you like to have committee review?
I would suggest it goes to safety committee, just
Yeah.
for a little more detail.
Mhm.
Sorry.
That's fine.
And, talk a little bit more in detail about maybe which training is appropriate. If we do the 2.5-hour class, how often, and forms and, again, just a little more detail.
You want to do that Monday?
Well, this will piggyback well because we're about moving in a direction where now the Jefferson County Fair Board will also need this level of training because of this adoption of that one-time liquor license, they also will need to be brought up to date, and CETA is well prepared to make those presentations to the council or anyone else you deem necessary. We could be here in a matter of at the next scheduling moment to take care of that.
the next meeting is
Monday
Monday
at 6.
at 6 here.
Okay?
for
The public safety meeting. Okay, so Connie, would you make a motion then to refer this to committee?
Yes, I would make a motion that we refer this issue to a safety committee.
Moved by Boyer,
Second.
second by Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Great, thank you, Don. We appreciate you bringing
Okay.
this to our attention.
Mayor, just for one quick
Yes.
point that Don didn't bring up. A year ago when we started the coalition, we were number 2 for binge drinking, underage binge drinking in the state. As of a couple weeks ago, we are now 42nd for a lot of the work that the coalition has done. So, Don's done a lot of the hard work. There's a couple people that are in the audience. John's on the board too. So there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this coalition.
Fantastic. Great accomplishment.
It is.
Appreciate
It's-
that.
When we first started, believe me or not, it was a daunting task, but I think the commitment of our coalition members, we have 26 coalition members now. That number has grown 330% from our very first meeting. So we continue to engage new partners. We've engaged just recently, we had the school board attend our meetings to give us some direction on the code of conduct. We partnered with them to get that done as well. So a lot of hard work, and again, Julie's participation and her support through her department has been absolutely phenomenal.
Great to hear. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Next, I see James Moore is with us. James, if you're ready to present, we'd like to hear your request on an addition to your street closures.
Yes, thank you very much. You can see we've added a Thursday from 1 o'clock component to put the stage up. And in clarifying things with Rustin at the convention center, it was a misunderstanding about Sunday being an obstacle for having a main stage out in front. So we've added those 2 components.
Okay, so then in addition, what we had approved prior was all day Friday, all day Saturday.
Correct.
And so we would be asking for the street closure, and again, those were, what
let me
streets
be-
would
let me be
actually be
clear.
closed?
On the Thursday, we're not talking about closing the whole Broadway and all that from.
Right.
It would just be the end of the street where we're working on the stage. So that's a little bit of a special ask,
Okay.
because that would mean, I mean, it's conceivable.
So possibly the driveway from the courthouse?
Yeah, it would leave
to
the
end of
driveway
street?
open to the courthouse, but
Right.
if we could have that to build the stage, that would be most excellent. By the way, there's also a Thursday component at the 3rd Street. Maybe you've talked about that already, but the third Street block party is going to start Thursday night as part of a pre-festival festival,
And that-
because we don't mess around.
Okay. But is that going to include a street closure?
For
Because-
3rd Street, I don't know, they were
because-
asking that separately. not
No,
with us.
that is, it's not. It's at the dead end, right up against the railroad tracks, right on that dead
Okay.
end part of it. So it won't be a street closure.
Okay,
But
great.
they still went
Oh,
for
that's right,
permission.
it's
to-
3rd Street, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, yeah, and I'm mixing metaphors, so.
All right, great. So then the request then is to allow for just that end portion of the street. So you would not be closing Hempstead likely. You're just going to
Not
close
for
from,
Thursday,
on Thursday
right?
from
1 o'clock on. we were
from say
asking.
that end of the street, from the driveway of the courthouse to
To
Hempstead,
Hempstead, right.
From 1 o'clock.
And
to
then we're
construct
adding
the
Sunday
stage.
as well. That, we hadn't asked for Sunday because I didn't think it was possible. But so Russin said that's not an issue. So we would keep the street closed for Sunday and have a festival more like Iowa City Jazz
Okay.
Festival, where Sunday is a big component.
Okay, and then adding full day Sunday.
Well, a little shorter evening. Our last act will be at 7 rather than 9, so it'll be a little,
Okay.
you know, it is Sunday, so we're.
Okay, very good. This is going to be exciting, no doubt.
Some lot of great acts coming, that's for sure.
Any questions, council? I'd entertain a motion to approve the request for the extension of street closures.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, moved by Ledger Kalin,
Second.
second by Boyer. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thanks, James.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to it. Okay, next, we're going to invite Tracy Vance, our Fairfield Economic Development Director, to unveil Fairfield's new marketing video, or one of them. Go ahead, Tracy.
Is it okay if I speak from here?
Yeah, that's, speak loud.
Okay. Yeah, maybe
Oh,
I.
that's portable, yeah. Good.
Come on, muscles.
Well, about last summer, early fall, FIDA commissioned a marketing video to be put together for us marketing the community, both in terms of our recruitment efforts and then also in general for our employers to use for recruiting employees. It will also be used in conjunction with our Come Home initiative with Manpower. They'll be able to utilize that. Hopefully we'll be able to put it up on the city's website, chamber website. Obviously it's on our website now. What I'd like to be able to do is show you we put this together in 4 different segments. One's an introduction, which I'm going to show you now, which is 2.5 minutes. And they're all between 2 and 2.5 minutes. The 3 other sections are on culture and history of Fairfield, leisure, and the business environment. Why do business in Fairfield? They're all in different segments, so you kind of tailor it to your audience, or you can show all 4 if you'd like. Altogether, they're about 9 to 10 minutes. But I'd like to show you just this 2-minute and 23-second snippet of the first one, just to kind of give you a flavor for what that's like, and then hopefully we can work out whoever I got to work with to get it on the website. So
Okay.
let me see if I can.
Fairfield is a great place to live.
Great quality of life here. You have time to spend with family and friends and do the things that you love to do.
This is the most palpable sense of community that I've ever experienced.
It's not that often that you find entrepreneurial spirit and art and culture and nature, all in such a small place.
And it's filled with people who really care.
People who can take the vision and the gifts and the resources and give and give and give to help make this the best community anybody could ever live in.
Fairfield has a lot of the amenities of a larger metropolitan area. with the commute and the price tag of a small town.
I love the library, I love the restaurants, music scene.
Our 35,000 square foot arts and convention center that hosts some of the best performers from all over the country.
You wouldn't expect a small town in southeast Iowa to probably have so many things to do indoors and outdoors.
We have a wonderful farmers market.
There's really lots of choices. We never have a shortage of things to do here.
We're very fortunate in Fairfield that we have a diversity of businesses.
When you look at the productivity of the companies in Fairfield, you'll see that they really stand out.
So many people willing to be on the cutting edge and try new things.
We really have all kinds of businesses that are represented here.
People are always looking at ways to enhance and make life even better in this community.
This is not your typical small town.
You know, we're not stagnating, we're growing. It's an exciting time to be here.
I challenge anyone to come and experience it for themselves.
It's just a beautiful place to live. I really love it here.
We kind of want to do something similar. A lot of you remember the Great Places video.
Yes.
And so when we commissioned to put this together, we kind of showed them that video, and the Boothby brothers, if anybody knows the Boothby brothers, put that together for us. So that's kind of what we modeled it after, and hopefully we get that same feel. So.
Very good. Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing the other segments. Great.
They are on our website, on our homepage, growfairfield.com, so you can go to visit that and view the others.
Well, Tracy, the other thing too is I know how much work goes into creating video, and it's great that you have this much done, that you have actually 4 segments and 4 pieces. It'll be really helpful, really useful in promoting our community. That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I've got a second. I just want a quick update because Darren asked me about it earlier before the meeting. I wanted to the e-recycling business. They are going to be having a grand open house on June 26th. So just going to kind of give you an update on that. We're still working out some of the details as far as the time and kind of maybe what kind of event it's going to be, but we've just been an email from them this morning that that's the date that they're going to do it. So I thought I'd give you an update on that real quick.
Very good. Thanks, Tracy. The council will move on to our resolutions and ordinances. We have second reading that is essentially going to create our West Business Urban Renewal District. And this is a public hearing, so I'll declare the public hearing open at this time and ask if there's any public comment on the proposed urban renewal area. Not seeing any public comment, we'll close the public hearing and ask if there are any comments by the council. And Kevin, I think you were going to make a recommendation.
Yes, Your Honor. I was going to request that we waive the readings. They are out there working around in the dirt a little bit, doing some what I call pre-construction efforts, but in the sense that we've had no verbal or written objection, we'd request that we could waive readings tonight just to go ahead and get that district established so we're in at the ground floor.
I would like to move to suspend the rules.
Okay, motion by Hamilton to suspend the rules.
Second.
Second by Hammes. Any discussion? Go ahead, John.
What do we gain by, or what do we lose by not suspending?
Well, it's just that they've kind of been holding off on what one would call construction, really, and rather just kind of doing pre-construction efforts because, of course, for us to get on the ground floor of our increment, what they call the base begins at point A, you know.
So it has to begin right now.
They
pass the final thing right now.
Yeah, they couldn't do any.
Wait until we finally pass.
Yeah, they couldn't do any man-made improvements until we had that passed, and in that sense, I wouldn't want to hold them up.
Right. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion to pass from the third and final reading.
So moved.
Moved by Hamilton.
Second.
Second by Hammes. Any other discussion? Now please call the roll.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Hammes.
Yes.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Ledger Kalin.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Boyer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, council will need a resolution to fix a public hearing on the disbursement of or authorization of a loan. The proposed date will be our next meeting, June 10th, but Kevin, if you would give us an update on what's coming at that point in time.
Indeed, Your Honor. This is a $3.8 million of planning and development SRF loan we would be taking, which of course comes without interest payment until such time as we roll it into our construction loan for the improvements that we would presumably be starting in the spring of 2014. That's of course our goal, and we'll be engaged in this engineering throughout the rest of this year. I would say that tomorrow night at 6 o'clock we're having our utility meeting for what we would call the kickoff of this effort, where we'll be giving our recommendations about the improvements that, of course, these funds would be helping to design. So.
And what are some of the elements that'll be in the proposed?
There'll be elements, the improvements at the facility, which will include the headworks, of course. Also will include some addition to our sludge storage. Will include improvements to the facilities that are there in terms of our ditches being renovated. Really major improvements at our facility that would increase our capacity, I would say somewhere around the 20 to 30% range. And also the first extension of conveyance from our facility coming northward on our east side on our main trunks there. The older trunk being the one we're aiming at first, 1924 date on that one. And of course, we're going to soon be getting into some issues with land acquisition related to that project. I don't know, Darren, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think if anybody would like to come to the meeting tomorrow night, you're going to come to a very eye-opening session on what's ahead for us with our sewage treatment and conveyance system to get that to the plant.
Yeah, it's the big one, and of course these funds will pay for development of the engineering plans and site stuff and bidding for both projects, the conveyance portion and the facility improvements.
And this will begin to address the overflow issue as well, right?
Right.
First big step.
Right, and this will continue over for the next 7 years, I believe. The construction phases that are going to go on. We're going to try to reconstruct most of the eastern side trunk that comes down to the sewage plant. Then we'll start working on the force main system from Grease Lightning across, and then we'll work our way back up on the west side into the area of town where Hy-Vee and those places are, down through my neighborhood and that. So we have a pretty ambitious program that's been lined out for us. We've had our rate studies for both water and sewer done, and recommendations for what rates would need to be to pay off these loans.
That's the eye-opening part, right?
That is the real
Indeed it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Is this 3.8 million for all of these projects over the next 7 years?
No.
I didn't think
This
so.
is just the very tip of the iceberg.
This will
I want to clarify that.
Yes, this will pay for the
Phase
planning.
one.
This will pay for the engineering and planning and development of the first two steps, this first phase of construction, which will be the facility improvements, which will also include stormwater storage at our new facility, increase of a $20 million or a 20 million gallon basin will be down there.
Okay.
And our first engineering for our first step of conveyance, which will takes us into the southeastern quadrant to a decent degree, but it doesn't put us above. It doesn't put us midway up or anything. The next,
No,
our
it
next
only brings
phase.
us up to about Lamson Woods.
Yeah, just below
on the
there.
First phase,
Yeah.
just below Lamson Woods.
Yeah.
That's where the construction's probably going to be the heaviest first
Yeah,
for the piping.
yeah.
Um,
Our engineering now for the next phase would begin at a midway point through construction of the first phase here. The engineering for that second phase will begin, so we'll be back to that at that point.
Kevin, you're saying this pays for engineering, planning, and development? We don't get anything hard out of this 3.8 million?
Well, I mean, in terms of in the sense that you can't get anything hard without doing the soft costs first, I guess we do.
Good answer.
But that's in that sense, almost specific.
It's a yes and a no answer.
Yes, a yes and a no. That's right. Very.
this will pay for stuff actually out in the ground, not just engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll
That was
pay
my
for
question.
some.
Yes.
It'll pay for getting easements on the ground, for instance. I feel like some of this money may pay for us, getting easements on the ground and getting structure to be able to do the work. But This is planning and development phase stuff. But you gotta consider the fact that the worth of the improvements themselves, it's a relatively small percentage that this planning and engineering development stuff costs. You're looking at anywhere around 15 to 20% those costs are. So, but they're always there on these projects. There's a lot of specifically there's a lot of electrical engineering that goes into this, tons of that, and there are also some components in here, frankly, that when we did our first phase of the sludge storage, we kind of left to this point here to do. So that's added a little bit of cost outside of what we're going to do anyway. So I think that was probably an okay thing to do, but we are at a point here where we're going to have to pay for an inordinate amount of engineering right quick to get these first two phases off the board. So it was always going to happen, though.
Okay, so we'll entertain a motion then to set June 10th for our hearing on the capital notes.
So moved.
Moved by Hamilton.
Second.
Second by Boyer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Next, council, again, we just have to simply set a public hearing for our annual budget amendment for 12-13. That would be June 10th also. Entertain a motion to set the public hearing for budget amendment.
So moved.
No? What do you got? That's all I got on here.
No, we are actually.
This is resolution?
This is a resolution. Yeah.
Yeah, resolution.
Yeah, we
Okay.
need, that's.
My apology.
It wasn't very clear.
Okay, so we have our budget amendment. Okay. All right, so Kevin, would you like to walk us through that, or Joy?
Well, we could walk. Are there any specific questions about it? I would point out that we had more revenues than expenditures on this, so we actually under budgeted revenues to a greater degree and did have quite a few of those coming in some departments, particularly Park and Rec, for instance. We had a lot more revenue from fee-oriented activities than we would have thought at the beginning of the year, so that's a happy story. Some of these dollars, of course, other financing sources, there's about $1 million you can see under revenue item there. That would represent the exchange of our CDs that we have recently been putting into our general fund for covering efforts past, most recently in our last fiscal budget, or the current fiscal budget soon to be over. Other miscellaneous incomes are in there, but you can see that charges for services at about a half, 51,400 is quite extraordinary increase. We're really happy to see that. There were some expenditures that were unbudgeted, as you can see, in a couple of different areas, not as much in capital projects as one might have thought, considering we had a switchover of management in between, so many times that'll lead to some increases on current projects. Didn't happen really to any great degree. That's good news for us. You see some of those expenditures related to the Park and Rec activities under Culture and Recreation there with under the expenditures of $201,193. Not all of that is Park and Rec, but a good portion of that is, of course, financing the projects that created that 551.4 of good revenue. So, but if anybody has any questions specifically, we'd love to entertain them.
Kevin, remind us what the other funding sources of $1 million is?
The
CDs.
the CDs that we were cashing in, we had $1.5 million. Yeah, 500,000 of those CDs had to go to the capital improvement project fund to cover our capital projects of the current fiscal year with Kirkwood and D and 2nd Street. But then the rest of that we have placed in the general fund and reserve, looking toward our upcoming end of the fiscal year. So we're going to be doing the rest of our fiscal assessment that we've been doing with Piper Jaffray over the next week or so. All this coming to fruition, hopefully, I would say around mid-June, we will have a whole lot of finality to what we've been talking about. And we've got some other, of course, conversations coming up related to that stuff. But we could break these down for anybody to a pretty great degree. But all in all, I would say it was a pretty successful year. There were going to be some of these things happening, of course, in a turnover year like we had, but we were able to keep it to a minimum. And, of course, ended up having a lot more revenue than expenditure being the case with them. So that's always a good feeling. Can be otherwise, of course.
This needs to be passed by
Resolution.
By resolution.
But I mean by date, time. I mean by
You have to do it by the end of May.
Yeah.
by the end of May.
So
And here we are.
here we are.
I'll move to approve.
We thought we'd make it easy.
I'll second.
Moved by Hallie to approve the resolution for certifying the amendment to the state for our budget, second by Hamilton. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Hallie,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Hamas,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ledger Kalen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, council, we have something coming to us from Planning and Zoning. I'll ask you to speak to that regarding the moratorium on the construction of wireless cell towers.
Yes, Your Honor. I was basically had been getting quite a few calls from cell providers as of late. It has increased over the last 4 to 6 months. The first 6 months I was here, it was sporadic, but now I would call it a deluge of calls, and so it kind of indicates there's a gap in here. There's a good market for increased maybe towers in our area for coverage purposes, and so we were. I had a request to do maintenance, what I would call maintenance or M&O on an existing tower, and we were going to put that permit out. But I thought, well, in doing so, right now is probably the best time to go ahead and bring it forward to you guys. And then I did a little bit of research on where we're at with our attentiveness to the whole cell tower issue, and it seemed like that we could do a little bit, be doing a little bit different, and a little bit more with a little more verve and process. So what we're asking tonight is that we pass a 360-day moratorium on cell tower, new cell tower installation, which is not M&O or any kind of a slight addition to an existing tower. Wouldn't affect those permits. We will still issue those faithfully, but we will be having a moratorium until such time as for 360 days, or such time as we come up with what will be the appropriate ordinance to set up the process we'd like to see. And we have a copy of something that's interesting to us, but we have to go, John and I have to kind of pour over the planning code a little bit more to make sure that that's simpatico or compatible with the way our zoning code is set up regarding special use permits. We'd like to maybe try that kind of a process with it, which would be, but we'll have further hearings about that in council subcommittees probably before we get to that point. But this 360-day moratorium would give us time to set that up and get it to where you'd like to see it. John, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I do. Actually, what's going to happen is we've already authorized Kevin to look at RFPs and RFQs for working on the zoning code, and it will take that long under the zoning code probably to get into this particular area, because we're real light on this in the zoning code right now. We've got communication towers authorized in the industrial areas in the zoning code, sort of, but it doesn't have anything to do with cell towers at this point, and that's a different field that we dealt with. We were shown examples of 25 and 35-page ordinances that the consultant brought to us back in 2009. We ended up pretty much tabling that with an interim ordinance for a few months, and then it's pretty much fallen off the edge since then. So 360 days is probably realistic as far as getting it in under the overall undertaking for the zoning code and having it in the right spot. Kevin and I are looking at something that would put this on the outer fringe areas and industrial park areas as far as where you'd locate anything new. And then beyond that, we'll have to take another look at what we're going to do with what's pre-existing, maybe grandfathered. But that's the reason we need that much time. There's an error in your resolution that you have right now in that we're talking about 360-day moratorium on this at the same time that at top of your resolution it says expiring December 31st.
And that was where my
somebody
question
didn't
was
do the
gonna-
math on this, and I think it was me.
I will add too that this will be easy to fold into a new zoning code. This is a similar language. This came from a newer zoning code within our state, and it provides for ample public hearing. It also provides for the defense of the free and safe and enjoyable use of one's property. Also looks at how that cell tower installation may affect adjoining properties with relation to value. So the big ones are in this code. So we're going to continue going over that.
Okay. Thank you. Then I entertain a motion to approve the resolution for a one-year moratorium on the construction of cell towers.
Second.
Do we want to
Moved
amend the
by-
language on the top?
Moved by Boyer, second by Revelinsky. Yeah, let's just
I mean,
call
amend,
it,
take
what,
that off.
360 days or 365 days?
Yeah, my
Well, we
bad.
need to just take the
365.
expiring on December 31st, 2015.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll just amend that to expiring May 28th, 2014.
There are actually 365 days in a year, yes. Sorry about that. Missing 5 there. That's my vacation. That's what
It's not leap year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Next, council, take a report from our Recreation Task Force regarding architect for the gymnasium. I know we had interviews last week. Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Jane McMahon. Thank you for having us and just responding back after we did interview 3 architects. We interviewed SVPA Structure and Newman Munson. By a unanimous decision, we selected Newman Munson as our choice or our recommendation to you. Reason being is all 3 have comparable experience and so forth with gymnasiums and so forth. Newman Munson came in with a total different presentation. Their first comment to us after introductions was, "What are your concerns?" So they started writing down our concerns. They started addressing them within 5 minutes of their presentation. They had done their homework on the facility, where the facility was laid out. They had made, a gigantic map, plat map type aerial view that we could play around with, how you would place the buildings and so forth. The reason that I bring that up is because they engaged us right away, and they were interested in our project. Initially, their bid was significantly higher than the other 3. Again, as I mentioned, we were unanimous as a facilities committee once we listened to all their presentations that they were our selection if they would bring down their fee. Chris Smith, who is our representative from Carly Nelson, went back to them, asked them if they would lower their fee. I believe, Kevin, you were part of that too, and they did significantly. So they are more in line with the other 3, and so our selection.
Great. Great. And representatives from Carly Nelson were part of that meeting as well, and they're happy. They've got a good working relationship with.
Yes, and they have worked with Newman Munson before, because Carly Nelson, as you recall, is our construction manager. They're our agent. So they've worked with Newman Munson before. We did go ahead and take another step forward because Newman Munson is also jumping in very quickly with this project if we hand it to them. And we viewed one of their facilities, well, we viewed 3, but one in particular is the Kirkwood Community College, and it's a running track and 3 courts. It's a beautiful facility. It's being passed around now. Why it's beautiful is it's very simplistic. It's practical, but the beauty of it is when you walk in, you see the entire facility. You see the courts. You see the running track. I'm standing at the desk, checking in. So from an operational standpoint, I think that their ability with that example really meets our needs because we've talked about operating costs and so forth. Slick on the wall right behind the desk, they have a panel of all the lights. So they can just turn on and off courts. They're not running around, they're not running lights. It's small things like this that also kind of pushed us toward Newman Munson because they really were thinking through. They really thought through cost effectiveness, sustainability. A lot of glass is used. It does have a glaze on it, which uses diffused light. So from that standpoint, they have several architects that are LEED certified. Some of the nets. I mean, this seems like a small thing, but they have nets that divide divide the courts, but you can kind of see through them. So again, the people working they can see everything that's going on in this facility. So I think they really did their homework on a lot of things, and it is, we would love to have that facility, number one. But they came in, their original budget for Kirkwood was $5 million, and they came in quite significantly under that. But that was in 2002, so we're unsure, what the general market was at that time for construction.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Council, you have a recommendation then to approve the hiring of Newman Munson to do the initial architectural drawings for the rec center gymnasium.
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Ledger Kalen, second by Hallie. Any other discussion?
Jane, could you tell us how much it is?
That's why we're doing the drawing.
That's why we're doing this
Oh, you
right
mean
now.
For their work, for their contract. In other words, it came down, or whatever. Have we agreed on the price for them, or are we still
It
negotiating?
is a percentage of,
I see.
so it's like a 6.5% of their, of our, actually, let me
The
say it
overall
right,
cost.
of, if it's a $5 million project, it's 6.5 of that. So all of them put their bids in at a percentage.
Or John, were you asking what we would be, because there are some initial funds that we will be paying them to
Yes.
get the design started.
We do have kind of their fee structure. We're unsure, Chris was going back to them to double check. Do you know if that's?
A kind of a simple estimate, I think they were throwing out was on a $5 million project, we're looking at around $330. On a $4 million project, you'd be looking at around $287, something like that. So they were in the range of pretty much everybody we were looking at, was in about that range in there. Because it's hard to predict, you got a lot of services coming to site and doing services, it'll be, one way or the other. But I think for extra services per diem and all these things, it was pretty much everybody was estimated around $8,000 to $10,000 for those services. So.
I think when they brought their price down, it brought all three bids about 3% range within each other. I really like this company for the sustainability aspect. They've done a lot of LEED certified here in state. Actually, if you read that pamphlet, they've done a lot of the first LEED certified in several different types of buildings. So, one of the reasons we went with this construction manager is you pick a good architect and then you can design cost savings in the building. So more daylighting means less electricity for lights and saves everyone money.
A lot of energy in that meeting, a lot of confidence shown by those guys. Very excited to work with them.
I'll make one
Where are they
comment.
located? I mean, what's their main office?
They originated in Iowa City, and they have companies in both Iowa City and Des Moines now. So, yeah, good group.
One comment I'll make is I work with architects all day long with what I do, and I've worked with Newman on several occasions, and they're in a class of their own. They are a top-notch firm. Stand behind their work.
They also
very good.
did our indoor pool. They did something else. They did, excuse me? The Baptist Church. Okay. For some reason, I thought they did our library.
We were thinking library too, but I
think-
can't remember. I'm not sure.
They
Good,
did?
no, they are definitely well-known throughout the state for their construction. Okay, so any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Ledger Kalen,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Revelinsky,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Amos,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Great, thank you for the recommendation, Jane, we appreciate it. Next, council, we have an item that I'll ask Kevin to explain. This is an amendment to a TIF agreement we have with American.
Yes, we had been looking at this some time back, and John and I started talking about it in the sense that we didn't think that the assessment was going to work out the way they thought for our original contract. We have this amendment that is at the level that we had spoken about before. It's roughly a 6-year, $500,000 agreement. But John, you want to go into it just for a second?
Do you have it on your tablets?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I apologize, I don't have my folder with me, but I'll speak from my memory. What we have is basically a good faith keeping issue with the developer. And the developer really did spend the money they promised to spend. If there was any question, they spent over $4 million on the project. The assessor came in probably $500,000 less than I think the developer thought they would. It was and nobody complains about being assessed too low, but it did throw a fly in the ointment as far as the development agreement and basically the reverse TIF or the rebate plan under the tax grants that come back was originally set to be 90% of the increment over 10 years, up to $750,000. So with the $500,000 in 6 years, the developer is okay with that. We felt that to keep in line with the good faith effort by the developer, it would be not only probably a bad faith act on our part to declare some kind of a close call default over something the developer has no control over and we have no control over as far as coming close on the assessment. So the TIF agreement that is an amendment, it's very abbreviated compared to what it could be. When we met with the Finance Council in Des Moines on this, the first draft that I took up there was the old agreement modified, 27 pages long. This got reduced and canned into what you have was 4 or 5 pages by Finance Council to come up with a document that you can just record and understand what you're doing there. And basically it's got a new table of increment rebates. It's got an explanation that we're doing this to keep faith with the developer's expectation of that kind of back grant over the period of time. We even, in the amendment, you have a provision in there that if during the 6 years, because they're starting out with the first year of a lower assessment because it was only partially completed, they need part of a 7th year to accomplish the $500,000 worth of grants back, that we do not have a problem with them also seeking to do that. And so essentially, the expectation is the developer would go through the hoops on that, possibly decide they are going to ask for some additional money to make up on the back end of this thing, what wasn't there in the first assessment, even though it was substantially built and almost done and ready to call completed. It ran past January 1st before they were able to do, I think, into March. So that's what the amendment's about. Basically, I think the developer's satisfied with it, aren't they, Kevin, as far as it being reasonable?
John is here to, you haven't had it very long to look at it, but you do know the spirit of it. But of course, we would be, if we clear it tonight, we're clearing it, and then we're coming to you and requesting if you like it. You'll have our signature and willingness if you do, but.
I've looked at it. My partners have not, so I should run this by them.
Yeah, so this allows us to get our part over with and have them look at it. That it is pursuant to the agreement we were discussing, although we did have that addition of that one more year. From our perspective, feeling like as being one of what is probably a moderate amount of cities doing TIF work, working with a very small percentage of developers are willing to get out there and do TIF exercise. Important for us to be known as a faithful and good player in the market, and that's kind of where that extra year comes from and where this agreement comes from. So.
We want to try to get this approved before July 1st so they can get into it.
Indeed, we do need to do that. Yes.
I do have a question, John.
Yes.
I don't really understand why it's advantageous for the developers. We're doing this to accommodate the developers. That's the idea of this.
Well, it's advantageous for 2 reasons. One is it completely eliminates going the other direction, which we did the negative direction because of things we didn't have any control over, and just saying, you didn't make the $3 million assessment, and therefore it's
John,
all scratched.
This gives them one more year of recovering the increment. We are not recovering the increment.
They are, right. But I don't
So-
understand why going from 750 to 500 is to their advantage. That's it.
Well, that was the part that was actually a little bit to our advantage, because one doesn't want to make a deal when one gets no advantage at all. But
okay. So
there is a trade-off on going away from the default provisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're paying it off quicker. But.
Yeah, and if you look at the assessment level, I mean, truly the assessment level, the likelihood is that they're going to end up, they were probably always going to end up where they're going to end up now with this agreement and us with them, because the literal value of the thing itself was never going to be 6 or 8 million, which would be able to get them up into that big 750 number.
So they were it was gonna take them 10 years to get the 500, which you're getting now, but now we're just speeding it up.
They were actually probably to get to 750 that was in the original contract, going to need more than 10 years to get there and weren't going to have it anyway.
Right.
So,
I got it. Yeah. Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Thanks. So entertain a motion to approve the amendment.
So
and
moved.
then, assuming that once we approve it, it'll go to our developers, and then if there's anything else that needs to be done, it'll come back to us. So moved by Hallie, second by Hamilton. Any discussion other than mine?
Well, the net is a little lower. That makes me happy.
Okay. No, please call the roll.
Hallie,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Hammes,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Revelinsky,
Yes.
Ledger Caitlin.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, council, we have a presentation on a Fairfield housing study. Tracy, I don't know, are you going to make that, or would you like, or are we going to?
Well, I can.
Sure.
As I've mentioned before in previous discussions, we have what we think is a FEDA. When I say we, FEDA, and I think the city administration feel like we have a housing need in our community in terms of lack of maybe appropriate kind of housing, those sort of things. So we would like to forward on a housing study assessment. We have had contact with Area Region 15. They would be able to conduct that housing assessment for us for $10,000. This would help us in talking to developers, potential grant funding, USDA funding, all those kinds of things to help put together residential or housing in the community. I think the last one that was done is, best I could tell, is like in the Mike Brewer days.
92.
92, 93, if
Right.
anybody remembers Mike when he sat in my chair. So it's been quite lengthy, and even in some discussions that Kevin and I have had with a couple residential developers, I mean, again, they say, Tracy, Kevin, we believe you, but show us. We need that third-party assessment that says, okay, here's what the real need is for us to invest in your community. And so we're asking the city to be the fiscal agent and actually commission the study through Area 15. I can tell you that FEDA has committed up to $3,000 of that $10,000. I know the Chamber of Commerce has committed up to $3,000 of the $10,000. I've talked to a couple other of our economic development partners, i.e. Alliant, our local realtor group, and they are very interested. In fact, next week I'm going to be meeting with the local realtors, and I think they'll add some funding. I'm not sure what amount that will be, but they see the need for it also, obviously. And so we should be able to get the other, $4,000 that we'll need to get to $10,000. And that's not to say that we might, the city might have to commit a couple $1,000s or so, for your part. But we're working on the funding, and hopefully we can come up with $8,000 anyways, between the chamber and FEDA and some other partners that would be interested. So we're asking for approval from that. I think, Ed, do you have the letter? I don't know if you forwarded that to them from Region 15 on the cost and the actionables and
No, I did get an email on that, but that was not part of it.
So and they're ready. When I talked to Ellen Foudre from Regional Planning last week, she they're ready. They can start anytime, and probably look for completion early fall would be a guesstimate. Depending on, it's a lot of data collection and doing some windshield driving, and assessing they'll virtually assess every residential household in Fairfield. So
They will, not only is it an assessment and statistics, it's a tool. It's our tool to get money no matter how we're getting it. If we go through Iowa Finance Authority, we've got to have that assessment. We go for tax credits, you've got to have that assessment. So all of our potential developers in housing simply have to have it. And I must say, lately, the FEED have been doing a lot of studies and a lot of assessments that are giving us so much useful information. I've got about 2 emails I want to forward out to council members of labor shed studies and things that Tracy's been undertaking with the board, and just doing a tremendous amount of good work, getting us prepared to be in the right place at the right time, as they say, get lucky. So lucky being a combination of happenstance and preparedness. So this is something that's going to prepare us to hopefully find those developers out there who are applicable to our situation. One of whom has already been into town, looked at the property, a couple properties, liked them, but of course, waiting for the study. So
I move that the city act as a fiscal agent for this housing study.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
moved by Revelinsky, second by Ledger Kalen, with the understanding that we would also be responsible for the remainder of the fees that are not collected beyond the $7,000 or $8,000. So our portion, well, that's what you're being asked here, because we,
Well,
you know,
I mean, I'm not completely opposed to that, but I think, you know, I would rather consider that, you know, based on, you know, where we're at the time. I guess right now we need $4,000 more, but once you have a little more specific idea, I think.
I'd like to recommend we receive a motion that approves the contribution of the city. That's why it's on the agenda. That's what it's here for. Presentations have already been made to the FEDA board, and presentations have been made to the chamber board over several months, and they've come in as partners. And I think Tracy wanted to wait and make a presentation to the full council when he could show that he had the support of the whole community. So
Here's John, to maybe answer your question. I think why the mayor would like to move a little quicker is because we need to get this study underway, and to get some, the local realtor group isn't, I mean, we can probably get a commitment out of them next week, but some of the other, Alliant Energy, for instance, there's a process for us to access the dollars they have that we could potentially get, and that could take 30, 60 days to get that funding. And so we don't have, I can't say with any certainty that we're going to get that. I mean, they've been very good partners, and I think I have a good feeling about that. But for us to wait until we have the commitment from them would put us behind where we really need to be as far as time.
The fiscal agency is going to carry over into the next fiscal, so we will be kind of coming in with other funds and figuring out what the city's contribution needs to be. Of course, it gets worked out every time we find a new funding agent, and hopefully get more and more.
That's fine. I'll amend or I'll include that in my motion then.
okay, thank you, John. So motion to approve the Fairfield housing study and act as its fiscal agent.
It was the second.
Is there?
Yeah,
You second that too, Jessica. Second by Ledger Kalen. Any other discussion?
Just to ease your mind, John, just look at it as a small investment.
Well, I think it's
Something
worth it. I
could
just
grow
kind
our
of
tax
I don't
base
feel like it's a
significantly.
good fundraising thing to say, well, how about giving, and the city's going to put in whatever you don't give anyway. It's just sort of, it's just the timing of it is a little uncomfortable. It's not how I would like to see it done, but.
John, you know, the other way to do it is, I know we were sort of thinking aloud that that it might be equal participation between the three organizations. We want to approve up to $3,000 and put Tracy on the hot seat to get $1,000. We can do that.
Up to 3,000?
Up to 3,000. Or just keep it the way it is.
My question was, I assume this will come out of local option tax next year.
That's one possible that is one possible avenue for the funds. Yes, there are a couple of others.
And I can't remember, what did we leave in a balance there?
Right now, we have about $2,300 in there.
Yeah, but what did we leave for next year?
Yeah, July 1st, of course, we start all over and we
Right.
budgeted out.
What did we
about
leave for next year?
There's about
Do we know?
800,000 total in budgeted revenues, but as far as what we left for our 6.5%, I think it's probably around the $30,000, $25,000 range. Yearly,
More
that's.
like 20.
It was about,
Yeah.
Okay.
it was 20 to 25,000.
Okay, thank you, that's all I needed.
There are other possible avenues we'll present to you, though, down the road here.
Any other discussion? Now, please call the roll.
One other
Yes.
thing, the sooner you can get this study done, the sooner you can dump it into the information you're gonna need for your comprehensive plan.
Right.
It is a component that goes in, that's right. That is one component that will go into our comprehensive plan. It's a great deal of housing, so that's a good point, yeah.
Please call the roll.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Ledger Kalen.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Hammes.
Yes.
Boyer.
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to committee reports. Does Property Committee have a report this evening?
We did meet, but we took no action. We tabled the main item because the citizen didn't show up that made the request.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a Personnel Committee?
Yes, Personnel Committee met, and at this time, I would like to say that the Personnel Committee is recommending an increase of $5,000 for Kevin and an additional week of vacation, which would make him at 4 weeks of vacation. So I would put this in the form of a motion from the Personnel Committee.
Okay. Thank you, Martha. So the Personnel Committee did review the 1-year contract.
Yes.
With Kevin and made that recommendation.
Second.
So moved by Rasmussen, second by Revelinsky. Any questions or discussion?
Can he take off 4 weeks of vacation at once, or does he have to break them up at a time?
Didn't agree to break them up.
He's only going to take 2 weeks at a time. He
If I
has
take a
assured
month
us.
off, I may not be functional after that.
Right.
I've never done that.
Why is it 5,000 instead of 10 or instead of a higher number?
We felt
Or
that the work value that has been shown merited the $5,000 rather than an amount higher. I know that there was an amount higher that was expressed at a previous meeting, but after a review and discussion with the committee and with the employee, it was decided that we would go with a lower amount, but include the 1 week's vacation with it. So.
Also more on par with other city, the raises that other city employees are getting.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I have really enjoyed working with the city, Your Honor, for the last year, and I look forward to a long and fruitful relationship.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Do you have anything in your report this evening?
I do not. I don't know if any department heads have anything they'd like to get on tonight, but
I think they'd like to get on home.
What a setup.
We're going to go into closed session for, as according to Iowa Code 21.5J, to discuss real estate, pending real estate transaction. We thank everyone for attending this evening. And,
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
Moved by Hamilton, second by Revelinsky to go into closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
quick thinking.
Okay, we are in closed session.